Hey there, I'm Neil. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm the host and producer of Pause and Rewind, the podcast that chats to changemakers, thought leaders and role models who all share a common goal. They're striving to make the world a more inclusive place. And, let's face it, we need it. Each guest has a unique story when it comes to doing their thing, and we often know who people are in the now, but how much do we really know about them? Pause and Rewind takes a moment to explore the experiences, realisations and relationships in my guest's life that led them to where and who they are now, because everyone loves an origin story. We'll dive into tales, anecdotes and a little of what makes our guests tick. So whether you're here for insights or inspo or simply want to know about your heroes, this podcast is for you. You might never know someone's story, but if you pay attention, you'll hear it, you'll see it and you'll feel it. So, are you ready to pause and rewind? Hey there and welcome to season 4 of Pause and Rewind. It's only been a minute since the last season ended and I brought this season forward because there are some timely conversations that I want to help get out there, starting with my first guest for season 4, Kacey DeGroot. I was introduced to Kacey by the wonderful Professor Sue Sanders, who's a mutual friend and connection. And Kacey is currently campaigning to become the Deputy General Secretary of the National Education Union, the NEU, the largest education union in Europe, representing teachers, lecturers, support staff and school leaders in the UK's maintained and independent schools and colleges. Why is this so important? Well, because as a trans woman, we need to see more trans representation in those spaces, particularly given the impact that the Supreme Court ruling and the EHRC guidance is having on teachers and on pupils in schools. So we need to see people like Kacey in those positions. Kacey began teaching in 2005, and when she transitioned in 2018, trade unions were a massive support to her. So as a trade unionist, she's really passionate about what she does. She's been part of the LGBTQ plus arm of that for a long time. But actually, she's now stepping up and going into this position. She very much views herself as an outsider, but she's going in, you know, she's got the fight and she's got the experience as well. We're not just talking lived experience here as a trans person. We're talking about lived expertise. So it's really important that Kacey gets the support. So have a listen to this episode, learn more about Kacey. You'll hear all about her love of teaching as a drama teacher, the joy that brings her. She talks about her journey with ADHD and her journey of transness as well. So please take care of yourself whilst listening. We do cover some challenging topics, including mental health, suicide, and the current landscape for trans plus folk. But there's a lot in this conversation. I'm so excited to bring this season for you. Enjoy it. Rewind. I am so grateful to have you here.
I am so grateful to actually be here and have the invitation. Such an amazing group of people in the podcast.
Oh, well, I'm absolutely delighted to add you to that group of people as well, particularly with all the things that you're doing right now. Really exciting time, and we're going to go into that. But I'm going to start with the question that I ask all my guests. What does the world look like for Kacey DeGroot right now?
Yeah, it's going to be a cliche, and it's, you know, I think echoed. The world's a complete shit show, which is absolutely, you know, kind of, it's been the case for a while now, hasn't it? Yeah. Like I transitioned in 2018, and it was just off the back of that transgender tipping point moment where it felt safer to be trans and to come out and say that I'm trans, and to actually imagine that there is a possibility of being a teacher and an educator and being trans. And then it's just got worse and worse. And every year, probably the last 3 to 4 years have been the worst. And each one of those years, you kind of think, well, it's going to start turning now and it will start to improve. And then like it just doubles down and gets 5 times worse than you imagined it could. So, yeah, it's been really dark. When the Supreme Court judgment came out, last year, it was off the back of the National Education Union National Conference, and the announcement was made. And then immediately at that 11 o'clock on the Friday evening, the EHRC jumped in and kind of joined in with that. And like, it absolutely broke me. It completely broke me. I couldn't go to work. I couldn't go to school after that. My head teacher was brilliant. I spoke to her and said, you know, I was absolutely terrified that what this means is that toilets, I'm going to be told I need to use different toilets at school, that, everything was going to be different. And she assured me that it's not going to be like that, and, not to worry. And I did go back. But again, it didn't last. My mental health broke. And, I've barely taught really since that Easter time. And actually it's been a lot to unpick, but it's kind of physical as well. And it's taken so many doctor's appointments, and just, not being able to get out of bed, like being in so much kind of physical pain, really, that I couldn't work out where it began or ended, whether it's in my head, whether it's in my body, whether it's in both of them, whether it started in the head and then went to the body, whether it starts in the body and goes to the head. I couldn't kind of unpick any of that. But to kind of answer the question of where I am now, actually feeling a lot more positive. Like it's taken a while, and it's taken a lot of support from friends, and it's taken a lot of self-reflection. It's taken another round of therapy, which are like, I collect therapists, like some people collect stamps, but the latest round of therapy for it, and medication, and sunlight. But I kind of think it's also connected to my ADHD, and again, and gut health and autoimmune. These things have kind of come right into focus for me, and I've started to kind of understand that I am in control of my body, and I can make positive changes for it. So although everything feels horrendous, the world actually feels positive again for me, and I feel again ready to carry on the fight and to pick that up. And I can see not even the green shoots. You can see actually the strength of the fight that is in our community to come back. And I feel that's what I'm feeling now, is ready to actually to do that, to take that fight to them.
Yeah, it does feel that it does, as someone that is in there with you, it does feel like there is a strength and there is a solidarity and a real sense of resistance to what's going on. Thank you for answering so openly and vulnerably. It's crazy how these things that are going on manifest in us physically, mentally, emotionally, and the toll that takes. I think it's something that's so under acknowledged when it comes to what the trans community is facing right now.
Absolutely. And again, like the medical profession just seem to be, I think there's I'd written a chapter in a book ages ago about how being trans and how you're kind of gate kept and gaslit and kind of by doctors. And I know also then post transition women, it's exactly the same for women. When women go to doctors and things like that, we can talk about the menopause, we can talk about periods and kind of how that affects women mentally, and the kind of the balance between all of those things it's not just like a binary. No. Okay, what's wrong with you? We'll do this test, then we'll give you this. Actually, they've really got to listen to the people, and the interconnectedness between all of those things is so much more complex.
Yeah, and there's no holistic joined up approach, right? Yeah, and that says a lot about the shit show state of the country right now. The fight that you're feeling right now, that sense of you've got that fight back in you, comes at a really important time for you, right? As you stand for the position you are standing for. Can you share a little bit of light on that for the listeners at the moment? Because it's when our wonderful mutual friend Sue told me about that, so exciting. Could you try and light for listeners, please?
So basically this is for the National Education Union, the NEU. We're the biggest educators union in the UK, basically. And my kind of story to join the NEU came about when I transitioned. So in 2018, when I kind of was this like terrified man, well, I wasn't a man, but terrified male presenting person who was like, how can I do this? How can I be a secondary school teacher and be trans? And I kind of got in touch with the union. And lots of people talk about trade unions. They say, oh, it's like an insurance policy. Don't go into a school if you've not got union protection in case something happens to you. And I was using it a bit like that. And I spoke to the union and said, oh, I'm going to transition and what will happen? And they were amazing. I had two brilliant friends, Nikki Downs and Jane Nellist, who have just been amazing, brilliant trade unionists, brilliant activists, brilliant socialists. And both of them came and met me and kind of handheld me really to kind of assure me that they would have my back at every step of the way. But they also put me in touch with other networks in the union. And I discovered that there's a trans and non-binary educators meeting, which was like head blown. I couldn't believe that this was possible. Because again, at that time, like, we weren't far away from Lucy Meadows. If Lucy Meadows, if people don't know, was a primary school teacher who transitioned in school, and then was literally harangued and harassed and humiliated and targeted by the right-wing press, and basically, really sadly took her own life. And that story was very much there in my kind of, in my sense of kind of what was going to happen. And it was a very working class school. But I've had nothing but kind of joy really from the networks that we've had. And that's led me to step up. We have regional organising forums for LGBT plus members. And I became the West Midlands, one of the members for the West Midlands. And then I stepped up and became the elected seat holder. So I was on the executive of the union. The executive of the union is around about 80 odd people from national areas. We have a black seat holder, a disabled seat holder, an LGBT plus seat holder, different sectors, but also regions. And that's the role I've been doing for the last 5 years. I've led the LGBT plus sector of our union. But I felt that that's a point now where I feel like I've done my work, and I wanted in that area, and I wanted somebody else to take that opportunity. So I'm taking the next step. This is a very long roundabout way for me to answer your question, isn't it, Neil? I'm sorry.
I mean, the story behind it is important. So
yeah. So basically, I've put myself forward for the Deputy General Secretary of the union, which is not an LGBT post. This is for the wider union everywhere. And it's, in effect, I suppose, it's the second in command of the union. It's an elected role. It's a 5-year post. It's going to mean leaving teaching and educating, which is a sad thing, but it also feels, personally at this time, it feels like the time to do that, because it's so difficult right now. And I feel like actually I can make wins, and I can win in the classroom, and I can win in my school, but it feels like I can win more for LGBT plus people and trans students, as well as educators. I feel like I can do more in this role. So I'm probably the outsider. It's a national election, so all teachers and educators in our union are eligible to vote. They'll get a postal vote to elect me or not. But yeah, if elected, it's going to be a real a ground shift, really. Yeah. I think in terms of LGBT plus visibility, and trans visibility particularly.
I mean, history making, right? History making. Yeah.
You see, I wince and go, but actually, yes. I always hate the phrases, the first. But actually, I think to have a trans woman on the leadership of the union at a high level, meeting government and agencies and DFE and EHRC. Now, I want to be there in the room when they're talking about what RHSE education looks like and why, and how they're going to implement these rules in schools and what that means, what it means for trans kids. Yeah, because I don't think they've just they just have forgotten and erased them, and there's blood on their hands.
There really is. You should be there. We know when we look at leadership boards across industry sectors, there's a real lack of LGBTQ plus representation, but particularly trans representation. What has been the response since you are going for this? Have you experienced a lot of support? On the flip side, have you experienced much pushback?
Both. Yeah, unions are very strange things. They're very large. It's, again, I'm standing because I fundamentally believe in what trade unions can be and should be. And, I think there's a lot of kind of way has been lost. There's been a lot of affiliations with different trade unions to parties, the Labour Party particularly. And actually, that's got to change. Like, we can't carry on. The trade union movement can't carry on funding the Labour Party, is my view. My union doesn't, but that's a kind of a big shift. But it needs to be trade unions are the members. This is what I'm standing for again. The whole trade union. It's not shouldn't be something that people get decided what to do. Like I have leadership in my school and they lead the school. I understand that. But a trade union shouldn't be like that. A trade union should be led by the members. But if the members aren't involved and aren't involving themselves in those processes and turning up to district meetings and being involved as reps and kind of having those conversations, then really we lose that. And I'm standing because I want to change that. So I've had massive support. So I've got an amazing campaign team who worked incredibly hard to get me actually nominated, because I needed 15 nominations from different districts nationwide, and we got those 15. We actually got 17. But again, the pushback was already started with the nomination process, because a lot of groups within the union are desperate for me not to be on the election ballot. So we had kind of a lot of those were procedurally challenged. I think one of them was on a very, very small detail was sort of not accepted, but all of the rest were. So I'm on the ballot. The ballots go out in September. So I think we'll probably see if it's going to be lots of pushback. But again, I'm standing positively. I'm standing because I want the union to be better and to do better.
Yeah.
And I want the union to properly represent Black members and disabled members and LGBT plus members and women, because it doesn't feel like it does at the moment. And that's what I want to change.
I mean, I can hear it. I can hear the fight in your voice as you're talking about it. 100% standing with you. I know that anyone listening to this will be as well. How can people support you in this?
Well, if they're a teacher and they're in the NEU,
yeah.
It's really easy. They just have to tick their box and actually post it, because that's the kind of big thing, the apathy for people voting. I understand, like, there's apathy for people voting in general elections, and look where we are.
Yeah.
So actually, if they're an educator in the NAU, they just need to tick their box. If they're not, then if they can just speak to as many people as they know who are teachers and ask them, to say, look, there's a trans woman, an LGBT woman who's standing for this role, please support her, and again, because a lot of people won't vote and a lot of people won't look at it. Read my election statement. The other candidate will have one too. Have a read and put an X in the box, but vote, really, I suppose.
Well, I will get a link from you and feature it in the show notes so that we can get that out there to anyone listening. I'm so excited for you, and as I say, I can really hear it in your voice. When it comes to teaching, obviously you have had some time out, and it's been the summer holidays, and you're back next week. I know before we jumped on, you said you've really missed it. Are you looking forward to getting back into the classroom as well?
I really love teaching.
Yeah,
like I really, really do.
What do you love most about it?
I think I mentioned I'm ADHD. It's the perfect job. Like, I'm a drama teacher as well. So I suppose, like, the main thing is I love drama. I love theatre. I love the arts. I love seeing what that can do for kids. The numbers of kids over the years that have just come alive in a drama studio. And I think, again, it was really interesting. We talked to Sue Sanders, like, she talks about that in her podcast with you. She talks about those kids that can do amazing work in a drama space or in a music room or in an art room, where they're actually expressing themselves, and all of a sudden some of the rules that we do need, but some of the rules don't exist, or we can kind of subvert them a little bit with them, and they get to be, themselves, really, and that's kind of joyful. I love the kind of, again, the randomness of kids. You never know what they're going to do or say. It's a really beautiful feeling when you have, like, a class of 30 kids exactly where you kind of want them to be as an educator, where they're in this like energized learning zone and they're buzzy and they're kind of firing, but they're also kind of structured with you. Like, that's an amazing feeling. I don't know if sheepdogs have feelings, but like a sheepdog, I kind of look at it and think, oh, that's amazing. And I sometimes talk about teaching I say to the kids, you don't want me to be a sheepdog, do you? Do you know what I mean? Do it yourselves. Like, you don't want me to just keep on telling you to shut up or stop talking. But when it kind of works, it's nothing better. There's, and again, it's seeing their work as well. They never cease to surprise with their work that they do, and the kind of sensitivity and their kind of emotional intelligence in the work they create and the creativity that they have. And that, I guess that's when it goes well.
Yeah.
But there's been so many times where I've had really poor mental health, and the bit that I love is actually in the classroom, is teaching, and kind of it always picks me up.
We've had a number of people talk about being in educational settings, right? We've had Ollie from Pop and Ollie, Alex from Diversity Role Models, and what always strikes me is, of course, the joy in the classroom when you're bringing lessons to kids, but particularly when it comes to diversity, and on the whole, kids, parents, teachers, governors being so supportive of everything around teaching kids around inclusivity and belonging and such, and the media would have you believe something completely different. Is that your as well?
It's absolutely. And there's also this horrendous fear, like, Section 28, and again, I know Sue talked about that with you, but we do so much work in the union when kind of the really powerful events that we have is where we get a group of educators in a space, and predominantly with my role, that's been LGBT plus educators. But when they're able to share their kind of stories and kind of, actually lived experience about their own lives as students, because actually being a teacher really makes you think about your own schooling. You think about it on a really deep level, and you're like, crikey, blimey, like, was it really like that back in the day? And, it was. And we kind of think, well, I don't want it to be like that for the people that I teach. And I suppose, again, for me, like, my transness was so deeply hidden. Like, it was, there's repression, and then there was the repression that I had. But I know that's really common with trans women particularly, is that there's no space to be a trans woman. It's like, you're demonized, and we always have been. Well, we haven't always been. We have been since about the 1960s or so. So I think finding when the kids are kind of able to do this kind of work, and I do loads of work around anti-racism as well in school, and when the kids get so angry when you bring stories around this kind of discrimination, they get really angry about it. And again, with drama, I get to argue with them quite often. I play a villain. We did some amazing work around the Bristol bus boycott, and I have to play Ian Patey. His name was, this horrible guy in the 60s who basically said coloured people, as he phrased it. They had the colour bar for coloured people. Again, I know the phrase is really problematic, but saying that the Bristol Omnibus Company won't employ them, and I have to play him while the kids grill me as journalists and kind of members, and the passion they come at me with, and that's like, when they do the work, they really go for it, and they do it. And again, for them to be able to see themselves and understand that this is the world, this is the reality of the world, it does change them. And again, I think you're right that actually most parents love that. I've got a friend whose school is really brilliantly inclusive, and so many of the parents write in amazing letters. For every parent that they have who whinges about it, there's 30 who absolutely love it.
And so they should be. And it's really beautiful that the kids not only get to feel that sense of passion, but know that they can play a role in combating that later down the line, which is so needed. Kacey, I could talk to you all day about the state of the world of right now, and what's going on. But I'm also so excited to dive into your origin story. So with that, are you ready to pause and rewind?
I am.
Here we go. Take me back. Tell me all about little Kacey.
Little Kacey was this daydreamer. all of my kind of school reports, when I was very small, I was always in my own world. And just like a real odd bod, but also desperate to fit in. Like I kind of like had this thing about shame and not being shamed and not standing out. So kind of everything was really about protecting that, and kind of, my kind of the kind of, I suppose, like the real home environment I was raised in was very boy-y. Like I was like, I'm one of I've got a brother, is my only sibling, but we were also raised with our two cousins, one who was around my age and one who was a lot older, and we sort of, the street we lived in only had boys. So it was a 1970s, growing up in the street and kind of like climbing walls and kicking footballs around. No girls. That's not how it was. So it was but I knew, like, I wouldn't have been able to tell you at a very early age about my transness, but I knew it. And there's so many things that I can kind of, like, little imagery and visuals that I can kind of, moments that I can remember just thinking it, this is wrong. But I kind of, I think because I didn't want to stand out, I kept my head down and, and fitted in as best I could.
Did other people recognize that around you, maybe through some retrospective conversations around people?
I think I lost my mum a couple of years ago, but she used to say, she always knew there was something, she wanted to kind of help me, or go, she knew there was something there, but couldn't really work it out. I think, like, I used to get kind of, which was weird because she didn't do it with my brother. I was the oldest, but there was always kind of, because I used to have eczema and things like that. And, so there was always like a kind of like faff around me, like medically. She was a bit panicky around me medically, which I used to hate. I was like, leave me, get off, don't get off. But again, I think that was a kind of a bit of a rejection, because again, the male role models around me was my dad, who was like very blokey, and also my uncle, who was really toxic masculinity.
And what that were your role models, and you still turned out as the Kacey we know now. Same for me, growing up in a working class environment, not much representation, surrounded by West Ham fans, still turned out queer. Getting that through to people, that just because you're brought up in that environment, you're still going to turn out who you are.
100%. And I was queer. I love the word queer now, but it was, I wasn't ostensibly, again, I didn't tell anybody I was trans until I was, way past 30. It was so hidden. But again, I do think people kind of pick up on it and kind of notice it.
For sure. It's subtle, right? It can be subtle, or it can be really obvious, like the stares and questions from other kids at a young age. I can remember that really clearly. And you just know it's a recurring thing on this podcast, that you have that intrinsic understanding.
I think in terms of kind of like schoolwork, like I was kind of, everyone said, I was clever and kind of in that kind of group. But I never used to get really high grades for things, like, and I used to get like really frustrated, like, again, because I was always like a bit untidy, and I would always veer off on a tangent for stuff, and I was kind of, the things that I wanted to do, I was brilliant at. And this was, again, like the ADHD side. I spent about 18 months ago, I had 2 3-hour sessions with a psychologist to get my diagnosis with the NHS for ADHD. And it was like, at the start of that process, she said, I'm going to ask you a lot of questions about your childhood, and there's, will you be all right? I said, yes, it's fine, don't worry. She said, it might be difficult. I said, no, it'll be fine. And of course, like 25 minutes into that first conversation, I'm like blubbing.
Yeah.
Because actually, you said like little Kacey, you know, and I really, it was really about that little kid who just didn't understand. Like, there was no ADHD in those days, unless you were kind of like literally climbing walls and, you know, swinging off things in a lesson. You know, the kids who kind of kind of masked it and blended in, which I kind of did. And I also think this is interesting. I've kind of leapt on a tangent here, but the way that girls and boys traditionally manifest kind of neurodiversity is so, you know, again, this was something that I learned about as a teacher. You know, I remember in about 2011, 12, we had a kind of a training session, and the person delivering it said, well, you know, autism is generally a male condition. It's very, you know, there are girls who have autism, but very few, and it's mainly boys. And actually, at that time, we were starting to understand that there were loads of autistic girls in our classes, but they were breaking down in like year 11 and year 10 because of the pressure of masking it. And I think that's what I did. You know, I was never a naughty kid, and there were naughty kids in school. And again, now as an educator in primary school, I'm thinking about, you could think about the naughtiest boy in school, and you think, crikey, that kid was just not having his needs met by the school. He was being like shoved into this system, and his way of dealing with it, because he didn't care about standing out, he would just kick off and, you know, shout. But I was just fitting myself in and hiding it down and kind of, you know, and shaming it, I suppose. Because again, like, not getting good marks, you'd be like, I'd like want that. I just kind of would want the best grades, wasn't getting them. So I didn't get the reward. Thought I was working hard, but wasn't really working effectively.
But without the support, right? Without the support.
Yeah. Because it's just nobody knew.
Not only are you dealing with these different emotions and feelings and not understanding why you're not like other people, but there's that inner turmoil of people not seeing what you need. Yeah, it's tough. And I wasn't particularly a naughty kid either, you know, but I struggled, like really, you know, struggled with relationships and concentration and such. But I wasn't. I've hopefully got an assessment coming up at some point in the near future, but you never know.
Be prepared for the emotional trauma.
It's the idea of sitting down for 3 hours, which fills me with fear. Tell me about some of your earliest memories, or perhaps a favourite anecdote that you've heard about yourself.
I was always like really creative, and kind of, you know, kind of imaginative with the games we played. We used to, you know, me and my cousins, we used to play such kind of complex games, which I suppose all kids do, don't they? But you know, kind of you know, kind of we used to, like, we'd roam around everywhere. Like, I grew up in a kind of Victorian terrace house, but over the back of it was a coal yard from like railway. You know, the railway was sort of far away, and it was all kind of coal storage, and we just had like the run of the land. We just had 8 miles that we could roam around in. And my dad used to be a market trader, so again, we used to go off every Sunday, which we used to hate. We used to be woken up at like 5 a.m. and like shoved into like the old Volkswagen, you know, like the old Volkswagen camper vans, but it was a van, and it was like rusty as hell. This was in a day, it was like, nowadays it's probably worth 20 grand, but in those days it was just a battered old cheapest van you could get. And me and my brother would just be lying on top of like stuff that was in the van. And we get to the markets, and it'd be like, right, off you go. Because my dad was like a grafter, they call it, like, where, you know, he was like Del Boy. He used to do demonstrations of things. So he used to sell things like the KTEL multi-hacker, which is like a kind of dome with a springy handle that you like press up and down on top of like carrots and things, and it would chop them up into bits. It'd be like, and he would demonstrate it for people, going, ladies and gentlemen, hold your money, stand your ground. I am showing you now, you will be preparing your food really simply. I'm not going to, I will also throw in this knife. And he would be like slicing bits of paper and tomatoes with this, like, how sharp this knife is. And, you know, and then my mum he'd go like, you do get to the end. And he was an entertainer. Because again, it was so entertaining to watch him and listen to him. And these little pitches would probably last about 10 minutes. And he'd get like a big crowd around him. And then he would go, who would like one? Yes, you, madam, you're first. And like, that would be my mum. She'd be handing over a tenner, and he'd go, "Thank you very much. Who's next? Yes, you, sir." And then, of course, everyone's like swamping in, which is really entertaining.
Do you think that part of your theatrical flair came from seeing that as a kid?
I just think it has to have been, and again, I kind of loved when I got the opportunity to be on stage, which is kind of like secondary school. And I did love it. And it was absolutely a performance. My dad used to use that accent. I don't know where it came from.
I love it.
But me and my brother used to we'd go off again. And it depends where we were. We had sort of all kinds of places we go and build dens. And we went to, what the funny story was we both, we built this little den in like a pond thing in a farm. It's probably like a cesspool. And we were there were little islands in it that you could jump across, and my brother fell into it up to his waist, and it was really stinky, and they kind of had to bring him back. And then kind of his market trader friends going, your little horrors, find the cesspit to jump into. I don't think I think it was just like a pond that the cows drink from, but it was very much kind of out and about and having fun and kind of imaginative play, really.
Got a feel for little Kacey back then, and I wonder how much, and this is a question that's developed over a few episodes, but how much of little Kacey do you see in you now?
I see 100%. Right. It's really interesting question again, and kind of again using this little case, because again it was a question that the psychologist used, but it was also I had kind of, when I was kind of unpicking my transness, basically I was terrified I was a transsexual. Okay. Because I knew I was a transvestite, and I'm using the language of the day, because I'm quite old, So yeah, you were sort of either a transvestite, a crossdresser, or you were transsexual, and the way the media and that was the only visibility that we had. And it was generally about stories in the news of the world and things like that that I would still need to read. And you did get occasional role models. But I wanted my kind of therapist, and he was a trans man, and I wanted him to kind of scan me and tell me what I was, so I couldn't, because I'd read that if you are, transsexual, there was no getting away from it, and you kind of had to do that. But I'd sort of, repressed myself, and I was like, no, I don't want to do that. That's not who I want to be. Because I was terrified of the idea. So I wanted him to sort of tell me, and of course, a good therapist is never going to do that, and I sort of reached a bit of a stalemate with that therapist. And then I had a second round of therapy, and this was not an LGBT plus therapist, but she used Gestalt therapy, where you kind of talk to, I don't know if you're aware of it or if your listeners aren't, you kind of have an empty chair in the room, and you can have any number of people. So the therapist might say, okay, imagine your dad is sat in the chair. What would you be saying to your dad now? And you speak to the empty chair, and then you actually have to get up and move and sit in the chair and say, okay, what would your dad say back to you? And you have to say it back to you. It's powerful therapy. But I found it very awkward as a drama teacher, because I was like, do I do voices? Do I want to do a character? And of course, really, all you need to do is sort of say the words. But the thing that broke through for me was she had little Case in the chair, little Kacey, and that was a quite emotional bit where I kind of speaking as myself to little Kacey, and just saying the gist of what I said was, you're going to be okay, and you are okay. And so and I think that was the bit that really connected me to the idea that it was always there, and kind of who I was always there, and again, and who I was as the adult had kind of been that journey. It was a really kind of clear visual connection to that idea. So I think I'm always there with it. I kind of love my ADHD in lots of ways. I can be really funny. I can write speeches really quickly, which is always an advantage. I kind of, I'm able to, I can see the big picture of things quite quickly. And that's helped me with teaching and my trade union activism. I'm able to respond, and I kind of don't mind if there's not a structure. I'll just chuck myself into it. and react and be creative and, be imaginative with things, how I find the way through, and and I trust myself now. I trust that the answer will come, and it does generally.
The blending of all those different and actually recognizing, I think we talk a lot in these spaces about how it's really hard to leave one part of you behind. They're so interlinked. What did you think about the world during school times? What were you like at school? How did you show up?
So that was like really difficult. Like, I think secondary school was really, really, really difficult, because that was the point where I was, I'd started to, like, my kind of moment, I suppose, was me being like really inquisitive and imaginative, and I was like, I had homework that I needed to do, and my mum, because everywhere was a mess and my bedroom was a mess, and mum went, just do it in my bedroom. So I did it in my mum's bedroom. But then, of course, like, I'm faffing with things on a dressing table, I could have taken this out and spraying it, and my kids are exactly the same. My daughter's a terror. And I'm like, and there's a lipstick, and you sort of, looking at the little mechanism of it as it slides out and comes back in, and, the cap and things. But I put lipstick on, and for that second, I gendered myself female. And I was like, it was just like, and there was just it was just like, and I was like, oh my God, I'm a transvestite. And then I kind of like ran to the bathroom, and I was like scrubbing my lips with a flannel, so all the lipstick went over the flannel. So I like had to think, how am I going to clean the flannel? And it was still all over my lips, and I was like, oh God. And so there was like the immediate shame about it. But as I think about it, it was just literally like that, I was very young, I was 11, 12, 30, I don't know the age, I'm trying, it all seems misty, but it was just that seeing myself female, that was the kind of like, that was the seismic shift. So that happened at kind of the start of secondary school. And I was also I just didn't fit in. Like, again, it was an all boys school I went to. And again, my mum fought really hard to get me to go to that school. It's like, why? Because it had this reputation for discipline and stuff. And when I arrived, like, I started school in 1982, and it was the last school in Coventry that was still caning people. And we all had to wear cap, like a little cap, like a little public schoolboy. And again, it was the school was brilliant for rugby and football, and they had like loads of success with their sports stars and things like that. But they didn't really. We had a brilliant English teacher in the equivalent of year 7 who was a kind of drama-y, and we used to do some drama with him as well. So when we used to do our sort of Friday assemblies, they were called, where a sort of a year group in each house would perform for the others, and that's where I really came to life and loved it. But I didn't really get the chance to do it, and I think I just couldn't focus to work. And again, I wanted to, because the teachers knew I was clever, because I could chat, and I would get things as we were talking about it. But when it came to actually writing it down, I never really succeeded. But I was also I don't know if I was lazy. Like, see, here I'm dissing myself, aren't I? I'm saying I was lazy. I don't think I was lazy. I just think I didn't know how to study for my O levels. So I was at sort of the very last year of O levels before it was actually called 16 plus, before they brought GCSE in. So I passed them, but I didn't pass them well. I got sort of 5 C's and 2 B's. That was my sort of highest grades. And then I thought, okay, well, I'll go on to A levels, and I completely failed them, and I did maths, economics, and law, which is just bonkers subjects for me to do. Like, I dropped maths really quickly. I took maths because I got a B in maths at O level. I was like, oh, well, I'll take maths then, because I got a B. Then it was like, A level maths is like not the same. But again, I didn't take English, because I'd sort of, I think my English teaching was terrible in those days for the O level. So I just didn't fit in with anybody at school. I was just I could make people laugh. I could make people laugh in the assemblies, and I could make people laugh by playing the idiot and stuff. But I had fun in sixth form. That's where I kind of made a group of friends. But again, it was wasn't who I was. Like, it was in the days of Viz Comic. I don't, that kind of early misogyny, and kind of like, that sort of shock, that kind of boyish shock humor was everywhere,
Yeah.
which we thought was brilliant, at the time. But yeah, I think, and that, so school was just a horrible process, really.
Yeah. Do you know what did you want to do at the time? That question, what did you want to do when you grew up?
Yeah.
What did you think the goal was?
I was like, when I was really young, I wanted to be an inventor. Who I was going to invent. But I just like the idea of going into like a laboratory and like, coming out with like an invention, going, yes, I've invented this. Then I kind of always wanted to be a pilot, which I always loved, like, planes and things like that and flying. Always still been a bit obsessed with machines and like motorbikes and stuff like that. And then I wanted to be a lawyer. And I guess like part of me wanted to be the kind of, the flamboyant sort of,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have dared say I wanted to be an actor, by the way, for all of
No?
this. I wouldn't have dared say that.
What was the holdback on that?
Confidence with it.
Okay.
And just kind of, going, oh, no, I don't know. Probably prejudice again against the arts, but yeah, that's why I took maths, economics, and law for my A levels. I thought, I want to earn lots of money, and it was that kind of yuppie era as well, where everyone was like aspiring to be loaded and like with a loft apartment and stuff like that.
What was the next step then, having failed A levels and not knowing quite what you wanted to do?
So it's really funny. Again, the echoes with Sue Sanders. My dad at this point had a kind of kitchen sales company. So when I left school and failed my A levels, I basically went to work doing door-to-door selling appointments for fitted kitchens. And I kind of like, I sort of ran the little team. I started doing that with double glazing for another company. We did it as a sort of job when we were sick formers. We all used to get picked up in a minibus and we go out, just commission only pretty much, making these appointments and, having a laugh really. And then I kind of, because I'd done that, I did it for, it was actually a guy who worked with my dad. So I was kind of like the canvassing manager. And I did that for a period of time. And actually I ended up working for my dad, like making kitchens and, kind of in a small business. But I reached the point where I was just like, this is too much. I just don't want to, I was just getting very fed up. And I was also like, the way I was dealing with my transness at that time was it kept coming to me. It would come as like really haunt me for periods. And I kind of push it away because in those days I used to, and that was a point actually where you were starting to see some more positive trans representation. So I remember like Adele Anderson from Fascinating Ida, and I remember her story being in the papers, and also is it Jackie from Something Green, the sort of live. It was a bit the first sort of living documentary thing. So I can't remember. Paddington Green.
Oh,
And there was a trans woman, Jackie,
yes.
who again was a kind of, because again, neither of those two fitted this kind of stereotype of being either like stunningly beautiful, unrecognizable as being trans, like Caroline Cossey, but being outed by the press. There was that kind of trans person, or as the kind of trans person who's only just transitioned and kind of, was like I've said this before, like a bus driver, 49-year-old bus driver Bob says, now call me Marlene or something. And, they'd be at the very early stages of their transition. So they were the two extremes. You're either stunningly beautiful, but ashamed to, keeping it very secretive, or you were completely obvious and stand out and kind of, to be ridiculed and to be laughed at. There was nothing in between, but there was starting to be that kind of representation of trans people that I was like, wow, okay. But also I was like, I knew I couldn't be that person. So again, I think this was like when the National Lottery was around and had come out. And I used to imagine winning the lottery. And what would I do if I won the lottery? I was like, I won't tell anybody. I'll just disappear and just run away from my whole family so I can transition and have the money to not worry about how I'm going to work. Because in my head, like, I can't transition because I've got to work and I've got to do stuff. But if I win the lottery, I could just be in my space and kind of transition and I could pay for surgeries and things like that. And I used to wonder if I could get my feet made smaller. It's absolutely true. And I was like, how would that work? But of course, like, I wasn't accepting anything. And again, I would kind of, that would be like a period where it was there, and then it would just like disappear again. And I could kind of like get on with my life and do other stuff. And that was kind of where I was. And I think when my kind of life changed, my mum and dad had some friends, like a really lovely friend who married a actually Portuguese French woman, and they've moved to Montpellier in the south of France. And I went and stayed with them. I thought, I'm going to go and work in the south of France, but really, I kept on trying to get jobs. I was like, oh God, do you have a need of someone to do the washing up, une plongeur, like washing up in a restaurant or something like that? But I couldn't speak French. And but what I ended up doing was about 2 months living in the south of France and just reading their bookcase and having like beautiful meals with them and helping them cook and, eating like lovely south of France food and tomatoes and fruits and, drinking the local wine and actually just pausing and reflecting and thinking. And I thought actually what I used to love was acting. And that was when I kind of came back. I joined the Belgrade Youth Theatre, which was quite ironic because I was about 24 at the time, but something like that. But you could still join. It was up to 25. I think it might have been 21, 22. But yeah, it was a youth theatre. And that was just like, that was amazing. There were LGBT plus people there. There were like, it was like multicultural, like, there were people with disabilities, and we all worked together. And I performed on the stage of the Cottesloe Theatre, stage of the National Theatre. Like, our youth theatre won a competition, and it was just, that was beautiful. And then when I decided I wanted to go to university, I had to do an access course, which I did. And then I went to university and studied drama. Then I got married and we sort of had children. And that was all, again, me kind of every point I'd sort of started to try and unpick my transness and understand it, something else would happen. And again, it would, and again, because life does get in the way and you do fall in love and and then a family comes and houses and mortgages. And it was only, I think, it was a kind of period in my life, well, probably about 2015, where I just was sort of couldn't sort of be happy and sort of, and then I kind of unraveled it. It's a bit like Oedipus, unraveling his own story, or, kind of that's how it worked, really. And it was traumatic. It was, when I sort of said I was speaking to that first therapist, it was awful for my ex-wife, like because she had always said that she would, is straight. Although she did know about my kind of cross-dressing and that, those feelings, but I wasn't happy with it, and so there's no way she could have been happy with it. So the transition was the point we separated, and we co-parent now. Got 3 kids, and and actually, it's it came out in the end, really.
Yeah. I imagine that takes a lot of healing and a lot of patience, and yeah. Well, it sounds like you're in a good place now. There's
a lot of things that are kind of structurally better for me. I've had really hard times, like with awful rented accommodation and kind of money, and but actually I'm in a really strong place now. Yeah. And again, kind of starting to put things back. The world is hard. It's hard to be a teacher, a trans teacher at the moment, with kind of transphobia from the community, from parents in the school, but also from students as well. That's been really problematic and difficult.
Yeah.
But this has been ongoing for sort of 3 years, and again, I've sort of broke down a bit, and I'm building up again.
Building up. Was there a defining moment that made you decide on teaching?
So that's a really good question. When I left university, I wanted to perform. I didn't want to be a jobbing actor. I didn't want to sort of, be a paid actor. I wanted to be paid for my own work, like small company. And I used to sort of have all sorts of ways that I would earn money. Like, I used to work in a call center for 3 days a week, 13-hour shifts. But I would work my week in 3 days, and then I could use time for rehearsal and putting things together. And I did some really interesting stuff. I performed in India. I've done sort of street theatre, stilt walking characters, and non-verbal performance in Indian festivals and South Korea and kind of in Coventry and Norway. So I did some really interesting work, but it was getting harder and harder to survive with the kind of, the job, the paying job. None of it really paid. And I thought, right, I could train to be a teacher, because that would give me a bit of extra work to be able to teach, days here and there, do supply work, do workshop work. It would just be an extra string to my kind of workshop leader bow sort of thing. So I did the teacher training year, loved it, got a job, because you have to sort of do, get your NQT year out the way, and loved it. And actually, I expected I would be there to teach a day or so a week. Actually, it is the joy of educating it, and drama teaching particularly, and arts teaching, that's what's held me. And again, like I said, it's despite all the difficulties I've had very recently, the trans-related difficulties, it's still the best job in the world.
I love that. I love your enthusiasm for it. It's really shining through. Do you miss performing? Do you still perform?
That's also a really good question. So I always have projects on my mind. So I always have, there was all sorts of little projects and things that I would be wanting to work around. And pre-transition, I was a bit obsessed with Salvador Dali. So when I was in the my final throes of masculinity, I went all kind of beardy and mustachy, and kind of that kind of hipstery type style. It was around about that time. So I used to have a big waxed mustache, it was huge. I could put little Christmas baubles on it and things. But I loved Salvador Dali. We'd done a holiday, and I'd gone to the Salvador Dali Theatre Museum, and I was like, wow. So I kind of wanted to do a one-person show and then it was going to be a two-person show with me playing Salvador Dali, and my Norwegian friend from university was going to do Salvador Dali's Muse Gala. So she's this really fascinating character. There is so much story there. And I kind of I'd had it in my head, I was going to work on this Dali show where I was Dali and my friend was Gala. And now I'd like to do it where I'm Gala.
Okay.
But I'd like to kind of do it as a one-person show, but I kind of want to bring in my own story as well, to kind of merge the two stories together. So that has been a fairly recent thing where it's kind of coming back to me a bit, and something that I'd like to do. So one day, maybe.
Watch this space.
But my head is bubbling around with kind of arts ideas. It sort of never goes, I think.
Yeah, that'll also be the ADHD.
Also, yeah.
Constantly.
Yeah,
Well, you've got a lot going on right now, but definitely we'll keep my eyes peeled for that. That sounds super exciting. Has there been someone who has shaped you the most along the way through all of this?
Yeah, I think it has to be David Braniff Herbert, who is one of the professional organisers for the NEU. He's kind of led the LGBT plus section for a while. He's brilliant. Follow him on Twitter and Blue Sky, and because again his posts are brilliant, and he's just very such a kind of an inspirational character. I think the way that he works, it's the way that I work as well. It's not about doing the work yourself. It's about empowering others. This is how I've always taught. I said to you about being a sheepdog. I say this to kids, and you say, well, you don't want me as a teacher to be a sheepdog. You want them to do the work themselves, but you want to kind of facilitate them and get the kids to have the idea to do it. And that's how he works. And again, he did, I probably wouldn't be. I wouldn't be where I am now in the union if it wasn't for his kind of encouragement. It starts with a kind of phone call saying, hey, have you thought about being on the organising forum for the West Midlands? No, what does that mean? And he kind of gives you the confidence to do that. And then it was the same with stepping up, for the seat holder. And actually now he wasn't involved with the decision to stand for this position, but he was really happy for me when I told him. But we still work very closely together, and he's become a friend as well. But I think that would be the person I think that has kind of shaped my particularly recent LGBT plus queer journey the most.
it speaks to so much. I talk about this a lot. The importance of seeing someone, but not just seeing someone, of like encouraging them as well. Like,
Yeah,
and saying to them, you're really fucking good at this. Like,
yeah.
yeah, we all
And I
need.
hope, like, I kind of feel that I love that in him, but I hope that that's also what I do for others. That's certainly what I want to feel that I do. Like, it's always how I've taught. Like, I've said to him before, he's almost like a natural pedagogue. Like, the way he teaches, the way and I think he's the cleverest person I've ever known who's not got a degree, which again is, you would again, in degrees, what are degrees really? He was part of the original activist group with Peter Tatchell, who kind of invaded the synod back in the day, and he's always been involved in that queer activism. So yeah, but I think that's what I would love to think that I do, is to see good and talent and ability and capacity to make change in people, and then actually bring it out of them.
I mean, I'm hearing it, so I have no doubt that you do. And within that, I'm going to ask my final question for this segment, which is, looking back so far, what are you most proud of to date?
I'm most proud of the work that we've done. Kind of the LGBT plus membership, who that group are and what that group do and how that group work is phenomenal. And that's, I don't take credit for that, because again, David Braniff-Herbert, DBH, and actually all of the brilliant colleagues and comrades that I've worked with in that sector, from people on the organising forum, the joint chairs of the organising forums, the organising forum, the people who've supported me in those roles. But what we've achieved over this sort of 5-year period, we've just had such a huge growth in members. There's like 21,000 LGBT plus members now in the NEU, National Education Union, and we have like a really thriving trans and non-binary network. We had a member at national conference for the NEU, which is kind of the key event in the year. We always have an LGBT plus reception, and they grow and grow, and we celebrate things like queer joy, and we share poems and songs and lived experience, and there's always tears, but the tears are of kind of happiness, anger, but joy, and actually again strength, because again that's what we get from each other, and that's led to so many people stepping up to again, we're overrepresented. The LGBT plus members in the NEU are overrepresented as reps in workplaces, and that's huge, because the importance when we ask for strike action and things like that, the way the anti-union legislation that previous governments have brought in and never seem to be wanting to be overturned, it's really hard to actually get a workforce out on strike, because you need over 50% of people turning up, and it needs to be like a big majority. And actually, not many trade unions can get a strike action, a ballot through, and the NEU did, and I'm really proud of that. And where that happens is it happens in schools where there's a rep, because if there's no rep in school, the teachers don't really engage with the union. But where you do have a rep, and the rep is asking people, can you vote, can you send your ballot off, actually the change is huge, and the change is massive. It's not just about LGBT plus inclusion, it's also about protecting the members and workload, and actually standing up for what's right for educators, because the job is harder than it's ever been. So the fact that we've got so many more LGBT plus members in those roles, I think is amazing. We've got loads of people who go to their district meetings. We've got people joining the executive as LGBT plus members. And again, what I was saying about our reception, they're always hugely oversubscribed. We can never fit people in the huge rooms that we have. But we had a member who was there, and she was at the first LGBT plus meeting. I think it was, if I remember rightly, it was like 10, 15 years ago, where they had their first idea to have LGBT plus members having a reception. And she said it was 3 members in a hotel room with a bucket of Budweiser. And and there were 3 of them. And it was in a hotel room. And now, we like I said, everybody's jammed in. And and again, our conference, we have an annual LGBT plus members conference, and we have sort of 400 gays and LGBT pluses from all over the country, and we just converge on an area for 2 days, and the power and the joy in those spaces is amazing.
The House of Happiness is London's ultimate sober clubbing extravaganza. We're led and delivered but created for all, whether teetotal, sober curious, or just taking a booze snooze. We love a day rave, and on a Saturday afternoon you can expect banging house tunes, DJs on decks, dancers on podiums, and a fully stocked alcohol-free bar. Flamboyant, bold, with a glitter station to boot. We're all about safe, inclusive fun, and we even have a pre-meet so that you can make new sober buddies before you hit the dance floor. Grab your tickets from Instagram now at House of Happiness Official, and we'll see you on the dance floor. Are you ready for some quickfire questions?
Yes.
What album, book, or movie has had a lasting impact on you?
So, it's a movie. I mean, there's so many of every one of those. Like books, I would. I could do about 10 answers, but a film that I just blew me away, and I can't watch it without crying, is A Fantastic Woman. And I think I'm really sorry. My ADHD head has gone blank with the actress's name. She's just incredible. But it's if people don't know the story, I'm not going to plot spoil it much. But it's a story about a trans woman who's in a relationship with a cis guy who's kind of divorced or separated, and he suddenly dies while he's with her, and it's about the aftermath of that, really, and how she's treated. And she's just the most incredible performer. I think when we talk about this idea about can cis actors play trans people, and you look at Eddie Redmayne in The Danish Girl, and that that kind of posturing, and he's Eddie Redmayne, like, bless him, he's a good actor, but he's playing a cross-dresser in that film, and that's not a trans woman, But in a Fantastic Woman, every moment, her face, it just moves me every single time. Again, I think the film is so cleverly, beautifully shot, because she's always the gaze. She's always being gazed upon by everybody and judged. And, I think she's stunningly beautiful. Daniela Vasquez, Daniela Vega. Sorry. Yeah. But I think she's so beautiful, but she's also trans. Like, as you look at her, she doesn't look like a cis woman. She looks like a trans woman. She's beautiful. And some moments in the film, they manage to make her look quite masculine in moments, and in other moments she looks like really feminine. But I think that's a beautiful thing about being trans. I used to be terrified about how I can't be trans, and sort of, how shameful it would be to be visibly seen as trans. And now I'm like, yeah, I'm trans, and that's why again, like, I wear necklaces that kind of label me as trans and things like that. Like, I've got my Hella Trans necklace, and it's like I'm proud of it, and I don't want to look cis anymore. I'm kind of happy to look trans, and I think that film is huge part of that. But it's really emotional.
It sounds like a beautiful film. Definitely one to check out. What is a saying you live by, and one that you'd put in the bin?
So, really quick saying I live by is, like, we've got to be at the table, otherwise we're on the menu.
Okay.
That's one that came from David Braniff Herbert. But can I do a little quick one for that, second one for that? Because I have which is, and the background to the story, a theatre company that I absolutely love, Odin Teatret. They're very political, and they're completely multicultural, and they kind of work within different areas, and travel. And there's a 1970s film where they're in, I think it's Peru in South America, and they've been invited to go to Peru, and theatre is banned. The authorities have banned theatre, unless they can see the script, and they sort of edit the scripts, and it's sort of very heavily censored. And there's just this footage of the director of the theatre company basically saying, right, theatre's banned, but no one can stop us going into the streets in our costumes. And if people start following us, well, we can't help that. And theatre might be banned, but you can't censor actions and movements and imagery and that kind of thing. So that's what they did. And there's this amazing footage of them going off into the kind of, the streets, the kind of really working class, kind of poverty ridden streets and, the shanty town areas. And basically the phrase that I love is, he says, the authorities are the cat and we are the mouse, but sometimes the mouse is cleverer than the cat. And that's my absolute favourite phrase that I use quite often, because actually there is power in us being able to be subversive and kind of, inside the gaps and the spaces, we can still do what we need to do.
Absolutely. Oh, that's really striking. That's really striking, especially for the way we need to work now.
Yeah.
One for the bin.
One for the bin. Vote Labour.
I hear you.
I mean, it's, again, I just feel so betrayed. I feel so betrayed that we, again, we don't have a socialist party and a party that, I think the old political system, things used to go one way, then they go the other way, then they go one way. And actually you'd get a kind of balance. Even if one government would be doing bad things, the other one would be putting it right. And we get there in the end. And the Thatcher years have just completely destroyed it. I think, that was the turning point for it, that 1979, right the way through. And again, I just feel so betrayed also by the Tony Blair government. I bought a bottle of champagne when I was at university in 97 when he won that election. And then very, very soon afterwards, it was kind of, okay, so, not just like, not cancelling student loans, but adding in and cancelling grants and, the betrayal was almost immediate. And where things are now, I just think, again, it's really sad.
It's tragic. It's a tragic fucking mess. What's been the best adventure of your life so far?
Like this, but actually probably, as I've mentioned it earlier, performing in India, was just joyful, really. Just seeing that country, well, a tiny part of that country, it was West Bengal, and the kind of hospitality in that country, and the kind of, I sort of went expecting to not be really particularly liked, because I was aware of the colonial history of it, Kolkata, where I went, formerly Calcutta, was the kind of, that was like where the British had their colonial seat of power. And I thought, oh God, they're going to hate me for being English. And of course they didn't, they kind of, there's just nothing but kindness. And, kind of, I performed a street stilt walking character, like a clown character in India. That was one of the things that I did. And I would just basically get the costume on. It was based on like an old, sort of like a Mr. Punchy, Mr. Full type character, had like a long nose, like on huge red and blue clowny costume and a sort of humpback on it. And then basically, and a swazzle. I used to talk through a swazzle. So it was like really loud Mr. Punch voice, and just basically take the character into the street and just cause mischief, stopping the traffic and kind of going places. And we literally, again, we were quite often booked because it was booked through a kind of festival. And they would sort of have their kind of middle class Indian people would be in the area where the festival was. But I just I wouldn't do what I was told. I would go out into the streets, and, kind of all of the kind of street kids were just like, would follow and just like refuse to let me get out of costume. I'd just have like a gaggle of them crowd of them following me everywhere. And that was kind of pretty incredible experience.
That sounds so much fun. What an experience to look back on. What 3 words would you use to describe you and your origin story?
Resilient, hilarious, random.
Resilient, hilarious, random. And they all flow so well together, right?
I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think you need the laughs and to find things hilarious, particularly right now, and randomness in order to be resilient, I think. So, yeah. Does it matter what order they appear in?
I think random first, because I think my randomness, I think the resilience would be last.
Yeah.
You know, because my randomness does cause hilarity, but then I will bring it back. Like, you know, I will crack jokes, and sometimes at the wrong moments I'll say something and, you know, go too far, you know, but actually it what is really important to me is actually keeping going and not stopping.
Yeah. Amazing. Let's fast forward a little bit. What exciting things do you have coming up? I mean, there's the big one.
Yeah, I think this is definitely a crossroads in my life again, because if elected to this post, that's 5 years for the union, which in my head it feels like that would be, you know, 5 years for the union, and then I would like to return to teaching for the last 5 years, and that will take me pretty much to retirement. So obviously, if elected, it's going to be huge, and you know, I'm really looking forward to seeing what that would entail, and kind of, you know, what I might be able to do to make that happen, and who I might be able to bring along and get involved, and how many more people will I be able to kind of bring to trade unionism and that kind of activism. If I'm not elected, and there's every chance I won't be, because I am the outsider for it, I think that's going to be a shift, really, and I'm also excited about that. You know, I have been at the school I'm at since 2010, and there's always possibilities. It's a good school I work in that always has opportunities. But I also think, you know, maybe it's time to look at branching into other things. And again, the theatre is one of those things. Again, you mentioned that theatre show. That probably would be something that I'll pick up again if I'm not successful. And more travel, because again, I've, you know, just got back from Sitges in Spain, where my parents met. It was very emotional, like seeing the places, you know, where that are in old photos. And I've not had a holiday. I've not had a proper holiday in 10 years, where I'd actually just had a chance to just, you know, do nothing. I've done lots of traveling previously, but for the last 10 years, I've been so focused on transitioning and surviving, you know, and managing, that I've not done those things. So that would also be something to do next.
Beautiful time to be and relax, because we need that. What brings you joy, Kacey?
People, like, you know, and actually changing things, you know, kind of like, and being an educator is part of that. You know, like when we're talking about when it works and you can sense the change, but actually that's the same with the trade union work. And you know, I have had lots of issues around mental health, like I said, and my head teacher has always been really supportive, both of them, in fact. But you know, there's been times where my head teacher has said, "Well, you're doing too much, aren't you? You need to like cut back on some of the union work." And I'm like, no, I can't. Like, if I did cut back on that work, that would be the point where I'll break. You know, like, actually the joy that I get from those spaces, and even sometimes when I've been in the darkest space, you know, when like I said, I didn't leave the house for a good while after Easter, and when I started to go to out and about again, it was weekender events that we run, and you know, again, we've got such a brilliant team of organisers nationwide that, you know, attending those events, you know, their regional events where they've organised the guests, they've organised the workshops. It's just, that's joyful. And again, you know, being around LGBT plus people who are teachers or educators, but didn't realise, again, the power of being out, or the power of kind of, you know, the power of including LGBT plus content into their work. That's joyful, you know. And again, when you see the impact that this has, like, I mean, I'm talking about her because she was at one of these weekenders, but there's a trans member who came to one of our trans non-binary roundtable meetings, and she'd never been out as her authentic self. She, you know, and again, she's still not out in her workplace. She has to present male and be referred to as male. That's her life at the moment. But when she comes to union spaces, everybody knows her as her authentic self. And again, you know, the first trans and non-binary roundtable we had where she attended, we were in touch, you know, over WhatsApp, and she was sort of terrified, and we were arranging to meet with her, and Do you want us to come to the hotel room and help you get ready? Do you need this? Do you need that? Do you want us to come and meet you? And, you know, she was like absolutely bricking it, you know, beforehand and at the start. By the last day, and actually that was a particularly beautiful weekend, because I don't know if you ever saw the exhibition Kiss My Genders, which was at the really big arts centre in London, the gallery, I think it's the Hayward Gallery, and it was art by trans and non-binary people across about 3 floors. It was huge, and we kind of arranged like a social visit on the Sunday of our weekend. We'd done work on Friday night and Saturday. Sunday we went to the Kiss My Genders exhibition, and it was a group of trans and non-binary and like every kind of transness was there. And we just wandered around this exhibition of art, and again, I just almost as soon as we turned up, I just started blubbing. And it was like it was being in a space with so much trans and non-binary art there and representation, but also being there with that group of people.
Yeah, beautiful.
And you know, and she was just bubbling away and buzzing, you know, about being in that space. And again, like now she's really active and does loads of stuff. But you know, it brings me joy now. Like I still brings me joy when I think about her and her journey and who she is now. She delivers workshops at LGBT plus conferences and training events and all that kind of stuff. And you know, what could be better than that?
That's beautiful. Those spaces are so important, and you're right. It would be sometimes it would be easier to step away. They are effort and it takes a lot of work and it's sacrifice, but they're so needed. My final question for you, Kacey, is this. Do you have any words of encouragement or wisdom for anyone out there to help them get to wherever they're going?
Just be. Do you know what I mean? Like who you are is valid, and it's really hard not to slip into sort of cliche bits, I suppose now.
Of course.
But I think about what I sort of said to little Kacey, is to go back to that bit. You know, like I just think there is so much more joy and fulfillment in being authentic, like that. You know, it's kind of like therapy, really, isn't it? Like any therapy, somebody can be having therapy because they're in debt and they're stressed about that. But actually, part of the therapy really is getting it out and bringing it outside. When we keep it inside us, it destroys us and it festers and it eats us up. You know, it's like Gollum in the Ring, isn't it? Bring it out though, and that's the kind of. I just need to find a kind of more succinct way to say that.
Well, I got it, and solid advice. I am so grateful that we were introduced by the lovely Sue. Thank you for spending this time with me, for being such a wonderful guest, and the work you're doing as well. Like, absolutely rooting for you 100%.
Thank you so much, and again, thank you for inviting me. I'm just the company is so distinguished, and you are just so really beautiful to talk to as well. So you're doing amazing work.
Thank you so much. Well, here's to many more conversations. And people, if you can help Kacey, if you are a teacher and you're part of the NEU, please go and vote. If you know some teachers, get Kacey's story out there. Share this podcast. We'll get your manifesto included in the show notes. But wishing you all the luck, Kacey, and can't wait to see what's next for you, including that show.
Thank you.
See you soon. Take care.
Thank you.
What a fantastic conversation to kickstart season 4 of Pause and Rewind. Again, I'm so grateful to Sue for introducing Kacey and myself. I really, really, again, hear that fighting spirit coming through from Kacey when she's talking about, campaigning to become Deputy General Secretary for the NEU. Wow, what a role as well. What a piece of history that would make for Kacey to be elected. And she recognises that she's the outsider, and putting yourself forward for anything like that it takes a hell of a lot of bravery, right? But particularly as a trans woman, for Kacey to be campaigning that especially with what's going on, the rhetoric around transness right now. So yeah, I'm sure I speak for all of us when I say 100% rooting for Kacey. And if you can support her, please do. If you're a teacher, please vote. And if you're part of the NEU, please spread the word. Share this story with any friends that you've got or colleagues that are teachers. And let's get Kacey's story out there. Really valued hearing her story, her journey of transness. And when she talked about her ADHD, her love of her ADHD, and what that has brought to her, because I think when we think about neurodivergence, it's important to focus on the strengths as well, as much as the challenges and barriers. I talk about that a lot working in DEI, and the things that brings to Kacey's life. She's able to be funny, she's able to write scripts quickly, think on her feet. Those things I really appreciated as someone who identifies as neurodivergent. With Kacey's thoughts on that as well, and just her sharing those 3 words that describe her and her origin story: random, hilarious, and resilient, and the flow of those as well. Because right now we do need to see the humour and having fun and letting yourself experience joy and putting yourself out there for others. Those all make us resilient, and they make our community and humanity more resilient as well. It's so important. Kacey, thank you so much for being part of Pause and Rewind and helping me kickstart season 4. Thank you for listening. Please do, as always, like, subscribe, share and comment. Please do comment. Help me beat some of the challenges around algorithms, particularly when you mention any words around inclusion, belonging, LGBTQ. It is a struggle at the moment. So help get this story out there. These stories on Pause and Rewind deserve to be heard. Please stay tuned for more amazing guests. And yeah, I'll be back next week. Cheers.